conducted with Mr. William Allen on February 16th, 1994. Okay. If you could just start by naming the theater in which you served, first off.
The Central Pacific is most of the... I've gone across the international date line a number of times because when we would go out and secure an island, we would come back to Maui, Hawaii, where the 4th Division was based, and we would regroup, they'd replenish casualties and everything. We'd go back out on another invasion. But all of my invasions was in the Central Pacific, and I never did cross the equator. I never did go down into the South Pacific and get involved with any of the operations.
Okay. And you were in Marine Corps?
Yes.
And which unit were you with?
I was with the 23rd Regiment of the 4th Marine Division. The company I was with was called Regimental Weapons. And each battalion of a regiment had its own mortar squad, own machine gun group, and everything. But the Regimental Weapons Company was an anti-tank outfit. And so I was with the 37 millimeter anti-tank group, and the 1st platoon was assigned to the 1st battalion, the 2nd platoon was assigned to the 2nd battalion, and the 3rd platoon was assigned to the 3rd battalion. Now the right song.
Okay. All right. Well, if we could just start at the beginning again. You were a member of the 4th Marine Division,
Yeah.
23rd Regiment.
William B. Allen from Chattanooga, Tennessee. And I served in the Central Pacific with the 4th Marine Division on 23rd Regiment and the Regimental Weapons Company of the 23rd Regiment.
Okay.
And
Conducted in the Marine Corps in Nashville, Tennessee in December 1942.
December 1942. Mm-hmm.
At the age of 17. And
Yeah.
what was the story again with your mother?
Well, I was wanting to go to the Air Corps, but Mother would not sign my papers to fly. She said she felt like that was signing my death warrant. But I didn't want to be drafted, so I went to other recruiting offices and came home with the papers from the Marine Corps, and reluctantly Mother signed my papers to go into the Marine Corps because I was doing anything but flying. She also signed the papers because I told her I was joining the Marine Reserve, and I had chances I would be home 5 or 6 months longer than I would be if I was eligible for drafting. She signed the papers, and I took them down to the recruiting office about 2:30 one afternoon, and they said, well, everything seems in order. And we've got an outfit leaving at 5 o'clock this afternoon or 8 o'clock in the morning, so which would you like to go with? No, I can't. I had to clear up some items to go back and tell Mother, so they said, well, we'll give you 24 hours. And so then I went back and told Mother, I told her to not worry about it. I was just going to Nashville to be sworn in and come back and wait for my call. But I was sworn in Nashville and rode a train from Nashville to Parris Island, and they wouldn't even let me off the train to call home when it passed through Chattanooga. When I was in boot camp, searching out all the activities of service, I thought I would like to be seagoing. A Marine aboard a battle wagon or a heavy cruiser. They said, well, everything's in order. It looks like that you could qualify, but the only thing is that they don't take anybody to sea school except those that fire expert on the rifle range. So I went out and during the rifle range time, practiced hard, and when the record day came up, I was the only guy in my platoon that fired expert. And I said, man, here I go. Sea school, here I come. But what happened is that At 300 yards, we had a 16 rounds of rapid fire. And I had a jam in my rifle. Well, I broke the jam and got off all 16 rounds. And the range officer was marching up and down behind the coaches watching the operation. He saw us having problems. And so after I got finished, he waited to see, and so they marked 16 bullseyes in that round. So he tapped the coach and says, "Put that guy's name down for coaching here on the rifle range." And so I stayed on the rifle range for about 9 months, signed up for a transfer to go to C school, and my name was drawn out of an extended list. There were a lot of guys wanting to go to C school. But they didn't tear the list up, and they sent them all to join the 4th Marine Division, fixing to leave the States. So we bid them adieu and had a time with them when they were leaving, and so we went back, the 30 of us went back to the rifle range on our call to go to C school. Well, the major out there in charge got a telegram canceling our transfer to C school, stand by for further orders. So we stood by for 4 days, and orders came in for us to go catch up with the outfit that was shipped out to the 4th Division.
Had you had previous experience with firearms before entering the Marine Corps?
No. It was all new learning for me.
So how did you feel about leaving home like you did? And
No problem, because I had already had a year and a half of college. I graduated from high school early, and so I was in my sixth when I came home to join the service, because the engineering teachers had left the school and was gone to General Motors and Ford for other projects. So I couldn't see I was getting anything out of school, so I came home in my second year of college and joined up.
What college were you attending at the time?
Arkansas Tech.
And you were studying to become an engineer?
Yeah, it was, at that time it was only a junior college, but I was in engineering.
Mm-hmm. So you had intended to join the service when you came home, and so you were somewhat prepared, I guess,
right.
for
I was searching out for
atmosphere. Did you have any inclination beforehand what Marine boot camp was going to be like?
No, I didn't know what the Marines were. Mm-hmm. But it was just, when talking to the recruiting officers down there, it just sounded like something I felt like I would like to be involved with.
Do any of your experiences in training and boot camp stand out? Do you remember much now?
Oh, there's some, only thing at this stage of the game, all you do is remember the humorous aspects of it. And so I could tell you a few humorous things at boot camp, but otherwise it's just rough training.
Was it about 8 weeks?
It was 8 weeks, but we had their spinal meningitis was on the Paris Island at the time when our 8 weeks was up, and so we had to stay 3 extra weeks in there because they were quarantined because of that. So we had to stay 3 extra weeks before they disbanded our platoon.
And still in boot camp for those 3 weeks?
Still in boot camp.
And then you had to stay as a coach on the rifle range.
Then after that, I went and stayed 9 more months on Paris Island as a coach on the rifle.
How did you like that?
That was interesting. We went to coaching school, and we were coached the 03, which was the old bolt action, the M1 rifle, which was just coming out, the Thompson submachine gun, the Rising submachine gun, the BAR, Browning automatic rifle, and the .45 pistol. We coached all of those things. Our graduation exercise from the coaching school was they field stripped all of these instruments we coached and put them in a bag and shaped them up and dumped them out on the table, and we had so many minutes to assemble all of those weapons. Plus the fact that we had to dismantle and field strip and put an M1 back together blindfolded.
Was it difficult to learn that, having had no experience with firearms?
No, the coaching, the teaching, the instructing was sufficient.
So they pretty much tell you by the board how to do it, and you just do it by repetition.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
Which weapon do you think was the most effective of all of those you just mentioned?
Well, there was also another one, carbine. And the carbine was a weapon that was used, it had 16 rounds in the chamber, and but it was primarily used for jungle warfare. But the M1 was the best, the one that I would say was the most. BAR, of course, was fired the same ammunition as the M1, but the BAR had to have a couple of ammunition carriers. They couldn't carry all the ammunition that they could fire. And they had fired emptied the clip so quick, and so it was kind of like a machine gun, really, the way it fired. But they had to have a couple of guys in their platoon to help them carry extra ammunition.
It was a heavy weapon to carry, too, wasn't it?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Whereas the M1 was about 9 or 10 pounds, I guess.
Yeah.
Did you ever, in loading the M1 initially, did you ever have the bolt hit your thumb, the famous M1 thumb? Nah.
No, but we were quite proficient with that M1, and the fact that we could, although at 500 yards, most of the firing was done in the prone position. But the coaches were trained, and we fired on the offhand position with one hand, and could generally hit the bullseyes at 500 yards at least 6 out of 10 shots, 6 out of 8 shots.
The Marine Corps very much stressed marksmanship, didn't it?
In fact, if you were expert rifleman, you got paid $3 extra a month. I went in and was paid $27 a month for my services, but I got $3 extra for being an expert rifleman, so I got $30 a month while I was in service.
That extra $3 helped, I guess,
didn't it did.
So after your time as a coach on the rifle range, this took about 9 months, so at this stage it's, I guess, getting into
Just
the fall of
about a year.
1943 or so. And you went and joined 4th Marine Division at Camp Pendleton,
That's right.
California.
Mm-hmm.
So what
In
did
September. It was September and February of 1944. We left San Diego and was the first outfit to hit a foreign from the States. Most of the invasions were troops went out into a staging area, and then the invasion was made there. But the 4th Division hit Roy and the Moore Islands and Marshalls directly from the States, and we went from San Diego to that invasion.
What sort of training did you undergo as a division to prepare for that invasion?
Basically, other than combat thing that we had at Camp Pendleton operations, it was going aboard ship and going over the nets, over the sides, and going down into LCVPs, that's the Landing Craft Vehicle Personnel Vessel. And cranes would lower our 37s down over into the equipment, and so we had joint training with the Navy, primarily when we went out for those invasions.
What was your opinion of the 37 millimeter anti-tank gun?
They found out that the 37 millimeter, we had 3 shells, AP, armor piercing, HE, high explosive, and a canister shell. And that canister shell was like firing a big shotgun. It was 3/8-inch steel balls. And they found out that firing that canister shell was better to bust up banzai charges than cross machine gun fire. We left the States, our ammunition ratio was 40% HE and 40% AP and 20% canister. But when I left the outfit, the ammunition ratio was 20% AP, 20% HE, and 60% canister. We had on 10 yen, for instance, we hit the island, and we were only 25% strength at that time because we had just completed securing Saipan. We had a 4-day rest. The first night on Tennessean, we had busted up. The Japanese were going to run us off the island, counterattacking. And so we busted up a thing, and during the firing operations, we had a couple of times the guy jump out and kick the bodies over in front of our gun position so the shells could get over them to hit the guys still charging.
This was canister shot.
And canister shot. And they were stacked 5 high in front of the gun position within about 10 or 15 feet. And so after daylight came and the tanks came back up to the front lines, we could walk for 200 yards and not even touch ground. Now, it wasn't a solid thing, but there were enough Japanese out there in front of us that you could walk cobblestone type steps if you wanted to and walk 200 yards and not even touch ground.
I just, that day, what went through your mind?
At 18 or 19 years old, it was survival. You didn't pay attention to that. That was just a matter of eat or be eaten.
Mm-hmm.
But fortunate for us on Tennessean that after that first night counterattack, why, that made the advancing the next day and all a lot easier because we got most of them in there attacking.
So the Japanese had pretty much sent everything they had that first night for the most part on
Yeah,
Tennessean.
on Tennessean. Mm-hmm.
Well, one thing I was wondering about is, as an expert rifleman, why were you surprised to be assigned to the gun crew of a 37 millimeter rather than being assigned as a Marine rifleman?
Well, when I went to catch up with the division, they had already reassigned, dispersed these expert riflemen into these other outfits. So regimental weapons is the one that had not gotten any men from the coaches. There were 250 men transferred from Parris Island to the 4th Division, and all went into different regiments. Well, regimental weapons was one company that hadn't been assigned any, and so I was assigned to that. My job primarily on that start with was a reconnaissance corporal, and I was out on my own running down there, so I guess that helped in the fact that I was an expert rifleman, being out on my own.
Because you did a lot of reconnaissance for the gun crew.
Reconnaissance.
Now, how did you, when you guys got on the ship in February of '44, did you know where you were going, and if so, how did you feel about it?
No feeling. We had not been on out on the invasion. It was just like another maneuver. And so when we, after over a month's time aboard ship, you got out there, you were ready to get off, to go home. But they loaded us up, and as we were hitting the beach that morning, we got up, had breakfast, just like another maneuver, and going through and through the whole motions. And as we were going to the beach, there was a bloated Japanese guy that passed our boat past the bloated Japanese, where the airfield had strafed the beaches and had killed these Japanese and carried them out to the water. And so they were out there bloated. One fellow in the boat took the grappling hook off the side of the boat and poked the Jap in the air.
Bad mistake.
And at that time, one of the guys in our boat says, "You know what? A guy could get killed out here." And from then on, there was not another word said until we hit the beach.
The realization had sunk in.
It's realization sunk in that, man, this is it.
And I guess everyone was a lot more sober, including yourself.
Yeah.
But did you try and just concentrate on the job that you were doing, and that helped?
Right. I tell you the truth, out of all of the 4 invasions I was in, I could see the Lord's hand in bringing me back, because I could tell you instances on each invasion where if the Lord had not been with me, I would never have come back.
So what happened on Roy Namur?
Roy Namur, just to start with down there, was the first night was they put us on beach protection. They were expecting the Japanese to come around the island and land in behind us and cut us off from both sides, you know. So with these 37s, they put us on the beach protection. Well, there's phosphorus in that water out in the Pacific, and so that night I could see blinking in the waters, and I thought it was the Japanese with their semaphore, because that's the way most of the night signals were done. And so I did not bother. I just waited and I waited, and so come the next morning at daylight, what was blinking was the tide had come in and tipped over a 55-gallon drum of flamethrower fuel that was rolling in the surf, and that phosphorus in the water was going and bumping up against the can and all, and it's what the blinking was. And if I had fired in that thing down there, that flamethrower fuel would have exploded. And that the explosion of that blockhouse was another thing that I told you about.
And the blockhouse you're talking about is what?
There's a blockhouse that was full of torpedoes, and when they pushed a Bangalore torpedo in there to explode the blockhouse, well, it made the torpedoes explode and killed a number of guys around the periphery of there.
And you were somewhere near the perimeter there.
Mm-hmm.
Kill anyone that you knew?
No.
At this point, you had you made a lot of friends in your division? In your
unit? Yeah, with my company, definitely. I'd been with them about 6 months. I'm in my platoon, and then we were being attached to the 2nd Battalion and maneuvers and everything. I got acquainted with a number of the guys in 2nd Battalion.
And were they guys from all over the states?
Oh, yeah, most of them. When my outfit was from New Jersey and New York and the Bronx.
As a Tennessee native, how did you relate to them? How did everybody mix together?
Well, real fine, because out of the 8 officers in our company, 5 were from the South. So it's strange that all the officers were from the South, but most of the guys were from the North down there. We had fun, no problem with all this.
How long were you on Roy Namur?
Roy and Namur Islands, it didn't take long to secure that islands because they were small. And then we went back to Maui, where our division camp was. We had a tent camp there, and they replenished casualties, and then we trained for 2 months and went out and hit Saipan.
So did the division take heavy casualties in this first invasion?
No. It was a small island around Inuitak, and so it was not anything. Especially when right after that they had the island invasion of after that Tarawa. So comparing those two, Roy Namur, it wasn't anything compared to that.
So you guys felt like you had lucked out?
We did, because what they've done is there was a lagoon around there. And so Tarawa had to land the beach and go across coral. Well, they took our ships inside the lagoon. It had already knocked out, the Navy had knocked out the heavy artillery in the islands. So we went into the lagoon and was able to land on the sand beach, and we didn't have to go across coral.
Did you see any live Japanese?
Oh, yeah.
Any prisoners?
Yeah, they took prisoners on Roy Namur also. Mm-hmm.
So how did you feel about it all at the time? Did you really hate the Japanese at the time, or was that just?
No, I tell you what, during my whole time, I never did what you might say hate the Japanese, because those that I was associated with in a live sense Found out they were only trying to do what they were told. But I spoke to some Japanese, a number of them, and they asked me what kind of fighting man was a Japanese. And I said the Japanese were tremendous fighting men, but the training was different from ours. They were never thought to think for themselves. They were trained to do what they were told. So if their officer got killed, their outfit was lost. They didn't know what to do. But in our training, the lieutenant in our platoon swapped places with me a number of times, and other guys in the outfit, and let us take the position of the lieutenant's job. In fact, when we got on to Iwo invasion, a number of officers were killed during the first few days. They got a lieutenant come up to take charge of a platoon. When the colonel sent him up to the outfit, he says, now I tell you, if you want to survive, if you want to do what's right, go up there and listen to that sergeant that's under you down there, then you might make it. But if you go up there and try to, then you ain't going to make it. So,
did he? Did he listen?
Well, yeah, he listened down there because they replaced a lot of lieutenants that were replaced on Eagle were what we call 90-day wonders. Went through OCS and went out, but they were all, we had no problem.
So did you generally have a good opinion of your officers?
High opinion. We respected them and all together. In fact, even up to the colonel down there we were on Saipan, for instance. We were trying to take a hill by dark one night. We attacked the hill 2 or 3 times and couldn't make it. So the colonel went up the line and said, "Man, we got to take it before dark. Follow me." Now he stood up and followed, but he was followed halfway behind a half track that was going up the thing, and the guys saw the colonel there walking behind that half track, looking around both sides and going up, and they went on. They took the hill that night and secured it and had a defensive position thing. So from the colonel all the way down, there was not any officer in there that we didn't really respect.
So this was the battalion commander or the regimental commander?
That was the battalion.
What was his name?
I don't remember.
So you were at Maui training for the next invasion, and the next invasion, Saipan.
Yeah, after Roy Namur, it was Saipan.
June of '44, is that correct?
Yeah, and it was. We did not go back to Maui before we hit Tinian. It was only 2.5 mile stretch between Saipan and Tinian, so we had a 4-day rest and went back aboard ship and invaded Tinian.
So what was Saipan like initially?
Well, it was more like what we understood the original activity during the war was down there. It was just a lot of hand-to-hand activity and I don't know. It was not jungle warfare like it was down in Guadalcanal or anything there, but we had the 2nd and the 4th divisions hit Saipan. 2nd Division was on the left and 4th Division was on the right, and we hit them. So the 4th Division went straight across the island, and there's a mountain down the Saipan. And so the 2nd Division went on the left-hand side of the mountain, and the 4th Division went to the right-hand side of the mountain and went down and then joined forces kind of at the end before we secured the island.
And it was difficult going, I guess, for most of
Yes, it was quite difficult because we had a lot of infiltrations during the night. And it's hard to get into too much detail into how difficult it was then. But because of being able to, our assault on Saipan basically was 2 battalions in assault and 1 battalion in reserve, and that lasted 4 days. then one of the battalions would come back in reserve and be replaced by the one that was in reserve. You go there 4 days, and then the other battalion would come back and be replaced. So in a sense, you were on the front lines 8 out of days. But being an attached unit, they found that these canister shots would bust up man's eye charges so good. What they would do is they would, when the 2nd Battalion would be go back in reserve to be replaced by either the 1st or 3rd, we had so many casualties, they just made one outfit of us. And so during that whole operation, we were only off the front lines 2 nights.
Oh, man. So what did you do those 2 nights that you were off the front lines?
Slept. Yeah. We were back in an area closer to the beach area where we did not have the concerns, only infiltration type thing. But they took us back where we could get a little breather.
So on Saipan, the Japanese were still executing banzai charges?
Oh, yeah.
Now that just wasn't a good tactic for them, was it? I mean,
no. But they were dying for the country. And for Hirohito.
Did you ever have any infiltration into any foxholes where you were? Or?
Yeah, they come through. In fact, they had gotten some uniforms off of some of the dead Marines that had not been picked up. And one night we had 5 Japanese to come through in Marine uniforms. And one of them could speak good English. And so he came back and they asked for the password. Well, the passwords would change at different times during the night. And so one of the guy answered the password. And so finally the guy in question asked him a little bit further, which outfit you from? He said, I'm from Easy Fox Company. Well, that's 2 companies, so he couldn't be. So they were mowed all 5 of those. They didn't make it back. They were looking at going back to the regimental headquarters and doing some sabotage back there. But
that'd be pretty frightening.
Yeah.
The thought of these guys roaming around.
And some of the Japanese could speak such good English. In fact, on one part there was an officer. We'd gotten some prisoners, and the guy still had his saber on the side. He'd taken his firearm and had his saber. And so a couple of the guys were talking about how he thought they could get a hold of that saber as a souvenir. And they were talking in different ways of how they could do it. And so in perfect English, the Japanese said, I beg your pardon, sir, but your lieutenant has already spoken for it.
The officer beat him to the punch.
Yeah. I don't know how much you want to go. I'm about another 5 or 10 minutes so I can go on. But
do you have to leave?
Yeah.
Well, maybe we better get into the language school. Was it on Saipan that you?
No. It's when we went back from one of the invasions, they found out that the Japanese, the prisoners we got, were not taught to say anything. They could talk freely. They were never told to not say anything. And so they were supposed to commit harikiri before they gave up. So the information on some of the prisoners we got was too late by the time the prisoners got back to regimental headquarters. So they picked 30 guys out of the frontline troops of the 4th Division and sent them to Japanese language school. And so I was one of the 30 picked for studying this. So I ended up was an interpreter for the Japanese language on out of the 30 guys that started school, 12 of us finished the course.
So on Iwo Jima, you, I guess, met a lot of the prisoners and interrogated them? Or?
But I only lasted 10 days on Iwo, and we did not get prisoners in 10 days on Iwo. It was only the latter part of operation did they ever get any prisoners, because
So-
there very few Japanese were left on Iwo after the invasion.
So did you interrogate prisoners on Tinian then? Or you never did?
I interrogated some prisoners on some of the operations, but a lot was when I got wounded. I was back in Hawaii and in the hospital, and so they were using some Japanese prisoners in Hawaii to do some work around camp. Close down there, and so I helped out some with speaking Japanese, interpreting for some of the prisoners that were around.
This was after Iwo then?
That was after Iwo.
Now, could you describe your experiences on Iwo Jima, your 10 days there?
Well, during an invasion, we have radio silence for 2 hours. Everybody's supposed to know what they're to do at least for 2 hours. And no instructions are to be given in 2 hours. And so, as we went in to hit the beach, there was some radio conversations. And I was hit on the 5th wave on Iwo, and we were listening to the radio, and the first wave hit, and they said, "No opposition. We're advancing forward." Second wave hit, and said, "We have no opposition. We're advancing forward to catch up with the first wave." And so when the first boat of that third wave hit, man, all hell broke loose. The Japanese had pre-fired the beach line down there, and so that when that third wave hit, it just almost with artillery fire. And from then on, it was Katie bar the door. And the first night on Iwo, I was out on a reconnaissance. Corporal came on a mission, and I came back to the outfit, and the lieutenant, before dark, said, "Alan, I want you to move your foxhole." Said, "I think if you move it over here, you could get a better firing coverage with our outfit." And no question, I grumbled, but no question, I moved my foxhole. And Sandy Beach, it was no problem of digging a foxhole. It was just a matter of getting sandbags or something to keep it up. Well, late that afternoon, or shortly after that, a mortar squad hit the beach. And they were looking for a place to set up real quickly. And so they used my old foxhole as a place to set up their mortar. They just enlarged it for 3 guys and that thing and set up. Well, that night, that mortar squad got a direct hit and all 3 guys were killed. So it was things like this that I know. Things happen on Saipan and everything. So really, if the Lord hadn't been with me, I wouldn't be back here. We had being a attached unit, our outfit had some high casualties. And so when I got hit on Iwo, some of the guys in the outfit wanted to say, "Hey, Alan, how about let me have that horseshoe you got up your hind ear?" But I don't consider it luck. I believe that the Lord just was with me and got me back here for a purpose. And that's just talking about over the past year.
How did you get wounded on Iwo?
280 millimeter mortar. We had never run into that type before. A lot of the arms. Iwo was a proving ground for a lot of new stuff for the Japanese, and so the shell that I got hit on was shrapnel in the back, and then my kidneys killed a few fellows down there. So that's the reason they were talking about me being lucky.
Were you, when you got hit, were you thinking that you were going to die, or did you know that you were going to be okay?
No. They took me back to the beach, and I went. Carried me out to the hospital ship. But in 10 days, all of the hospital ships were full and had already left the invasion area. And so they had all of the LCVPs to take the casualties to their mother ship. And after one of them got emptied, they brought all of the wounded onto one APA. That one of these victory ships is made during the war. And so they made a hospital ship out of it, but we had to come back under combat conditions because it was not marked with Red Crosses or anything. So we went under a convoy back to Guam. When we got back to Guam, all of the hospitals were full and everything, and they couldn't take us in the island there. And there was not going to be a convoy to go back, leave Guam to go back toward Pearl Harbor for 2 or 3 days. And the skipper said, I can't wait 2 or 3 days. So he went aboard the shore and got permission to take out on his own down there. And so we left a single ship out at 11 o'clock at night from Guam to come back toward Pearl Harbor. About 2 hours out of Guam, when we left out, the surface radar picked up a blip of a Japanese submarine. And so the skipper has a skipper that had been called back into the Navy for the duration. He had had a lot of service. And so they called the crew to general quarters, and what he done is that he's had the engine going full steam. I mean, just as far as that ship was vibrating, it was going so far. And then he would throw a master switch. All lights, all engines, and everything would go off. And with the momentum he had, he would glide around to another course. And then the lights would come on, the engines would come on, and here you go. He gives up enough steam to get momentum to go out, and then he'd throw the master switch. Everything dark, all the engines stopped. With the momentum, he glided around to another course. So they done that for about 2.5 hours, and lost the blimp that was out there. And so the crew stayed at general quarters all night. And the next day, it was the first time I was ever aboard ship that we hit a straight line. And so we hit a direct course and went to Enwitok and picked up 2 or 3 more ships, and then came on back to Pearl Harbor.
Made it to Pearl from there.
Yeah.
Not a fun ride, though.
No. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you coming in.
Well,
is there anything else you want to add before you go?
No. I could talk a long time with all that, but somehow or another, that the only thing that we talk about much anymore is just the funny things that happen. It's the only way you could forget all of the problems, because there's been many a night that the guys on both sides of me would get killed, and talk about it, the funny things.
I guess that's natural.
Yeah.
You still keep in touch with a lot of your...
Oh, because there's not too many of them left. I've been in touch, some of them down in Florida, buddy went by there and he had died. And but we do, my platoon, regimental company of regimental weapons, has an outfit that's.
You're going to have to pay a parking meter if you're not careful. I was afraid of this. I tell you too many things.
Yeah. Now, how much of this do you want to keep?
Under ship sunk under you.
On the way to Saipan, we left Maui and went over to Pearl Harbor together to join the rest of the convoy going out. And we went out on LSTs that time. And when we left Saipan, there was an explosion aboard ship, and it was sabotage or some thing. And anyway, the LST sunk out from under us, and I had to hit the drink without any life jacket on. And so the other ships around about us sent out LCVPs to pick up the survivors, and so they first time I got a guy pulled me up on a thing, it got so full that it swamped, and so it sunk and I had to hit the drink again. And I went on, and they pulled me up on another LCVP that come back out, and on it, and they said, don't get too many, and you could go into the water. You could hear them bumping heads of the guys that were in the water. But there was a big explosion back on the LST that was on, and a Jeep motor came flying through the air and came. Hawaii, Pearl Harbor, and they replenished us, gave us new guns, new weapons, uniforms, everything. We cleaned the Cosmoline off of the 37s and bore-sided them, and all went back aboard ship and caught up with the convoy.
In time for the invasion.
In time for the invasion.
That's incredible.
And it was in the assault troops of the...
Hi, Dan. Can you swim pretty well?
I can tread water.
That's all that matters, isn't it?
Before we went overseas, we had to jump off of a 31-foot tower into waters that had cork and all that in it to get accustomed to jumping off of waters into